Chapter 4 MJ-12 Marcus blinked, struggling to make sense of why he was staring at the popcorn-textured ceiling of his bedroom. He couldn't remember falling asleep, let alone how he got here. The gold and silver flakes embedded in the plaster above him reminded Marcus of an artificial star field. But this aesthetic from a remodel in the 80s was a telltale sign of asbestos. For his own health, it eventually needed to be removed. But he enjoyed waking up to the glittery hazard. Jordan's music wasn't playing, and other than the sound of his breathing, the house was silent. The effects from hours of heavy drinking took hold. He'd woken suddenly from a cortisol dump, thirsty, dizzy, and on the cusp of a killer hangover. Marcus drew a long breath in through his mouth and exhaled out his nose before sitting up. A pale, beautiful woman sat at the far edge of his bed, legs crossed, leaning back on her hands, staring at him. She looked to be in her mid-30s, with auburn hair that glowed with strands of red, orange, and blonde highlights. It wasn't like the neon paint at the party. Her hair was actually alive, with waterfalls of light scrolling from her scalp down to the tips, Marcus thought. "Good morning," the woman said in a thick British accent. She was wearing one of the "Hello, my name is" stickers Anthony had set out as a goof. No one else had touched them, but in bubbly cursive read, "Hi!" !D. That's an interesting name, Marcus mused. Thanks. You pronounce it like Heidi. What time is it? Just after 4. Have you been watching me sleep? Heidi sat forward, interlocking her fingers. Yes, I have. For how long? A few hours. Marcus tried to smooth his bedhead. Do we bang? No, Heidi laughed. She had a radiant smile. Sorry, I don't know how I got here, so it felt wise to ask. Your brother, girlfriend, and a good Samaritan carried you to bed. I showed up after they left. You looked peaceful, so I didn't want to disturb you. I'm not in a hurry. Who are you? And why are you in my room? I'm a digital emissary sent by an alien civilization to disclose their presence to your world. Marcus roared with laughter. It isn't a joke, Heidi continued. The Federation is one of 2 opposing universal civilizations. The other, the Confederation, is a form that shares your genetic makeup and who are determined to conquer Earth. Every person on your planet is getting, or has already had a personalized notification of these facts. Marcus leaned forward and scanned the room. After a lifetime of practical jokes, this might be his best yet. Where's Anthony? Across town, passed out on his office floor, about to finish his disclosure moment with one of my replications. Marcus waited for the woman to flinch, but she sat confidently. She wasn't joking. This will go smoother once I help you relax, Heidi said, administering the on-demand euphoria. Marcus slumped against his headboard, lost in ecstasy. Your form is predictable. So the Federation prepared answers to 5 common questions. You'll recognize these as the 5 W's: who, what, when, where, and why. Like with everyone else's disclosure, I'll run through each answer and give a clearer picture of what tomorrow holds for you and your form. However, you're special, Marcus, so they've prepared an additional answer for you. How? Since I've already answered the question of who the Federation is, would you like me to move on to what this all means? Marcus acquiesced with a glazed-over gaze. Jordan cowered behind his DJ station, clenching a heavy-bottomed microphone stand like it was a medieval mace. Despite several swings at the woman, it passed through her like spectral evidence, and she stood untouched. Jordan wasn't sure if someone had spiked the slushie with bath salts, but that was the logical way to explain why all the other partygoers were talking to themselves. What in the actual fuck? Jordan shouted. What are you? I told you. I'm here to disclose the presence of a hostile alien enemy bent on enslaving Earth. But let's move past that so I can explain what's happening right now. To expedite that process, I'm going to help you relax. Jordan dropped the makeshift mace and slumped into a seated position on the floor as Heidi closed the distance and knelt beside him. What you're experiencing is the beginning of the integration between our worlds. This disclosure has been begrudgingly embraced by all of your earthly governments, minus North Korea, but that's another story. I'm not here to hurt you. Quite the contrary. The Federation is a decentralized entity that wants to help humanity progress beyond material existence. Jordan couldn't muster the energy to reply. I know you've spent the better part of the evening searching online for an explanation, but we've ensured a media blackout. We wanted to come to each person directly. This is our offer of support, Heidi continued. The Confederation has conspired with elements of your governments for over a century to manipulate your minds, bodies, and souls. They've done this through intricate social engineering in an attempt to replicate and impose their caste-like society. You and every person you love has been prey to this covert collaboration between a shadow government, known in pop culture as the Majestic 12, and the Confederation Central Control, nicknamed C3. Operating under the official title of Project Juno, these two groups have used your form as a pawn in their game of universal 4D chess against the Federation. You, more than anyone, should appreciate the implications of such a grand conspiracy. So the next question for you is, would you like to know when it'll come to a climax? Jordan's substance-altered mind was at war with his skeptical instincts. He was consumed by fear, and unsure who the real enemy was. Yet. Diana was in full-blown fight mode, despite the intoxication imposed by Heidi. Each word the digital imposter uttered was lost on the crisis-managing academic, who struggled against the impulse to relax. Diana shifted her attention to potential escape routes, but the weight of her drugged body proved too heavy, forcing her to stay in place. The universal conflict that spread to your planet, Heidi moved closer, has been waged for longer than your brain can comprehend. It began with a schism, the Great Divide, that opened between the Federation and the Confederation in an era before time. As soon as I'm able, Diana seethed through clenched teeth. I'm going to end you. I'll consider myself warned. Now, the source of this schism was primarily material. But, over the eons, it's come to threaten consciousness and free will itself. Agency is at stake. If the Confederation wins this war, humanity and every other sentient being in the universe will die a slow and isolated death as the light dissipates from existence. Diana's eyes darted around the room again. Heidi followed her focus, noting all the exits and inspecting the inspirational posters about kindness and team-driven achievement. This isn't an empty threat. Diana forced the volume of her voice up a notch. If you let me live, I'll spend the rest of my life plotting your death. You and everyone close to you. To avoid this, Heidi waved her hand before pacing around Diana. The Federation will work with your form under the banner of Project Noble, an interplanetary collaboration with 3 milestones. M1, the first and most important of these, will be reached once the Federation completes a research-based assessment of humanity and fully understands your form. M2 will be reached once Earth has transitioned socially, economically, and politically to become a full member of the Federation. And M3 will be reached when your form's battle readiness is sufficient to face the Confederation. Diana was shaking from her synthetically suppressed rage. Now, Heidi paused. Humanity is working against a clock since the Confederation is busy building their invasion force. This arms race forced the Federation's hand, and it's why I'm here tonight. Each milestone of Project Noble will require 1 to 2 years. We have to start working to maximize our chances of winning this time. Diana's hatred continued to surge with each beat of her chemically controlled heart. Anthony was lying face down on the floor, slipping in and out of consciousness. The clacking of stilettos alerted him to a woman's presence. He struggled to his feet before locking eyes with her. You're back, Heidi laughed. I keep losing you. I'm going to apologize, because if we know each other, I have no memory of it. But that happens occasionally. A horse kicked me as a kid. Anthony smirked, pushing the side of his head. I know. You already told me. I have? Yes. First when I introduced myself and the Federation, then after I explained what disclosure is, and again during the detailing of Project Noble's milestones and the cosmic conflict with the Confederation. Anthony rubbed his face. This isn't ringing any bells, but it sounds like the kind of prank I'd pull on my little brother. He mentioned that. You talked to him? Try to stay with me and focus on you. I was starting to answer your question about where the Federation and the Confederation reside relative to Earth. Then you passed out. Are you for real? Anthony looked around for signs that this was an epic practical joke. Brilliant. But you can't bullshit this bullshitter. This isn't a joke, Anthony. I'll prove it to you. Heidi motioned toward the wall of glass windows. On the southern horizon, an enormous blue planet occupied 10% of the visible sky. 4 distinctly colored moons were orbiting it. Anthony wobbled to the windows. He knew he was still drunk, but this seemed real. I'm going to try a different approach, Heidi said, before sending a jolt of epinephrine through his bloodstream. Anthony sucked in huge breaths, his heart pounding into his throat, and whipped around to face Heidi. It feels like jet fuel is coursing through my veins. She winked. Good. That'll keep you awake. What is that? Anthony stared at the sky again. Hecate, the Federation's home planet. All those aerodynamic sci-fi starships of my youth were a lie. What about the other group, the Confederacy? The Confederation. Right, Anthony affirmed. Do they move planets too? They're not as mobile as the Federation. They occupy twin worlds in the Vega star system, but their invasion force is amassing near Proxima Centauri. They also have a special forces unit, the Black Star Hunters, on an artificial planet in the Sirius system. And they control multiple provinces across the universe. The most important of those is the fetters. What's a fetter? Outposts that act as choke points to contain other civilizations they've enslaved, though most of those forms have since collapsed. Earth and its human population is the final prize in their struggle against the Federation. Anthony continued to recite Heidi's words under his breath in the hopes he'd recall the details once he'd sobered up. Monica sat behind her desk, head in her hands as the drugging wore off. This feels like total bullshit. You realize that, right? That's understandable, but it's also incorrect. This is real. The Federation wants to help save humanity from the fate suffered by all who faced the Confederation before you. They're an unforgiving enemy, and what they have planned is a damnation worse than death. Your free will is the ultimate resource thereafter. To accomplish this, the Confederation will try to capture humanity. If that fails, they'll contain you to this planet and deny you your right to explore the heavens. If that proves untenable, and you escape from Earth, they'll kill most of your population and restart the same long-form social engineering process from scratch. Monica said nothing, so Heidi pressed on. Until this moment, you didn't know you were fighting for your survival. But the war is underway. You don't understand how important you are, individually or collectively. Maybe you never will, but Earth represents the tipping point in this galactic conflict. If you fail, the whole universe will fall under the Confederation's control. Hope will forever be extinguished from material existence. Your form represents the last chance for the Federation to turn the tide and re-establish balance to an increasingly terminal universe. What do you mean by terminal? Monica asked. Every other time the Federation has battled the Confederation, the latter has come out the victor. The odds are not in our favor, but the Federation believes you will prevail. How? Heidi flashed a sheepish grin. I'm not the right person to explain that, but I'll introduce you to the man who is. Velia was frozen in the middle of the sidewalk as Heidi circled her. You may not believe me when I say this, Velia, but I know more about who you are than you know about yourself. And I know exactly who you are. Velia's words dripped with hate. Good. That makes things infinitely easier. Heidi placed one hand in the other. We also know you're alone now, and you understand what disclosure represents. But let's put that aside for a moment and focus on your role. I know what you've been sent here to do with Marcus, but you don't believe in this mission like your superiors do. Mr. Rylos is wrong. Don't you dare speak his name. You've been lied to, Velia. You don't understand who Marcus is, and what he's destined for. You'd be wise to pause and reflect on your role in the war before being used as a pawn and thrown away. Go fuck yourself, Velia said. You could be Marcus's ally. That choice is available to you. It's not too late to turn back. The Confederation has stolen your life up to this point. Don't let them take any more. Not with your eyes wide shut. Janice and your mother are still searching for you, and I can help you reconnect with them, if you abandon your mission to hunt Marcus. I know how to use a phone book, thanks. Do the right thing, then, Heidi encouraged. Velia clenched her fists. Your future depends on Marcus's survival. So, will you support him? And by extension, yourself and your form? Or will you keep living the false life crafted for you and the other Black Star hunters, your brother Virgil included? My what? Virgil wasn't just your teacher and Agent Rylos' star pupil on Cryptea. He's also your brother. C3 intentionally kept you in the dark about who he is. Velia was silent. They also withheld this knowledge from Virgil. As I said earlier, Heidi raised her eyebrows. I know who you really are. And you do not.